the introduction, Tim, and thank you everyone for joining this webinar this evening. I'm quite chuffed to have such a following in that part of the world. It's very important to us. We Dog Point always strive to do the best we can, and we just like to allocate to certain markets. So I probably should start with just a little bit of an introduction. I think the first slide will come up now, be the first or second slide, and basically we're situated in the northern tip. If we just go to the next slide there. So basically we're situated in the northern part of the South Island. Marlborough's very lucky, definitely for grape growing. We have amazing sunlight hours, up to 2,500 sunlight hours per year, and we have very minimal rainfall, which is really beneficial for us. We don't tend to get a lot of disease pressure, but as you can see with that map, you've got the Cloudy Bay there, which is the South Pacific Ocean. That has a lovely cooling effect on the valley, but probably another really good part of this region is if you look in the north of that map, you can actually see the Richmond Ranges, that mountain seam up the top, and then down the bottom we have the Kaikoura Ranges, and that acts as a lovely cooling effect because it does get quite warm in Marlborough over summer. We can get temperatures up to 30 degrees, but having those mountains there, lovely cold air rolls off those mountains at night, and it can chill down to about 5 degrees most evenings. Hopefully it doesn't drop much lower than that during summer and early autumn. As you can see, Dog Point is situated in the southern valleys there, just probably about 10-12 kilometres from the coast, and we're definitely we're in these little, I suppose the southern valleys are very famous for their lovely clay soils. Another thing that's quite special about Marlborough is we get these lovely dry winds coming from the east. So during the hot summer days in the valley, it just keeps the airflow going through the canopy of the vines, which helps our viticulturists immensely. So yeah, that's probably that's probably a little bit about the region, but definitely a stellar place to be growing grapes, and that's why the region is definitely very successful. If we just go to the next slide, please. Okay, so this is Dog Point Vineyard. So we're located, as I said before, in the southern valleys. We're between the confluence of the Amarka, which would be to the left, and the Brancock Valley, which would be to the right. We're very fortunate here. We have, as you can see on the left, you can see those little Pinot blocks in the burgundy colour. They're north. If you look at that picture, you can look straight north. So they're north-facing, lovely clay soils, and it's just such a good environment for Pinot to thrive. And you can also see a little bit of Chardonnay there. But if you look down to the right, you can see section 94 there, which is, every year that little block there of Sauvignon Blanc just produces just the highest quality fruit. It always comes into the winery, and it's always just, in most cases, so pristine. We also have a little bit of Chardonnay there. I think some of our very old vines are down there, which is our Mendoza clone. And, again, yield's very low, but the quality is definitely very, very, very high. And probably down in on that east side, you get more of a clay line, because on the left you can see those very much dense clay soils, but then down the bottom you get a lovely clay line, which really suits the Sauvignon Blanc, especially the section 94. So we'll move on to the brand history. So there we have Ivan in the car, Ivan Sutherland, Margaret Sutherland, James and Wendy. They founded Dog Point in 2002. For a lot of years, Ivan was the viticulturist for a long time at Cloudy Bay, and James was the winemaker there, and they had a really strong friendship, bonded very well, and they worked together for quite a period. I think Ivan sort of set up the valley for viticulture, set up Cloudy Bay, but in that time also he was planting out vines through their properties at Dog Point Vineyards. They created Tukoko that you're all familiar with. James especially really sort of specialised in the yeast science of there, and I think it was in probably just towards the back end of the 90s, they decided that, you know, it was time to leave Cloudy Bay and embark on a more hands-on approach. You know, Ivan and Mark, they had the vines because they'd been planting for a long period of time. So it was a great time to start. So I think it was in 2002 they created Dog Point. Their first harvest, their first release was in 2004. And you know, they haven't looked back. I think I'll talk about it a little bit later on, but definitely a hands-on approach from the early days. I think James used to sleep on the couch while one of the presses was running, and Ivan was always very adamant about hand picking and looking after the fruit, looking after the grapes. I suppose the next slide. So you're probably wondering about the name. So basically, back in the early European settlement, dogs also used to protect a lot of the farmland, but a lot of dogs used to wander off and get lost. And they used to go up in the grassy tussocky area of Dog Point, and they're actually really hard to find or hunt down. So that's how we got the name. But if you also look on the logo there, there's the I think it's called, I always get it wrong because it's called the cabbage tree, the taikuko tree. That's a native it's a very sort of special native tree, native to that area. And we actually have those plantations. We actually have those plants situated throughout Dog Point. So we saw Kirsty Sutherland, Ivan and Mark's daughter, she came up with that. So she's the creative one in the business. Moving on. So this is the next generation. So there you have Kirsty Sutherland on the left. She's the creative genius. She's always helping me out with you know, just marketing material and images that you're probably seeing today. Yeah, definitely need her in the group. She's definitely she's just great to have on board. On the right you have Anna. She looks after our logistics and production side. She would be very much managing the teams right now. I think we're currently, so I think 2 days ago we started hand harvesting the Sauvignon Blanc. So I'd imagine she'll be out there in her boots right now, just managing everything. But, you know, she's such an asset. She's, you know, highly driven, much like all the Sutherlands. Yeah, she's good value to have around the winery, but definitely learn a lot from her over the last few years, that's for sure. And there's Matt, Ivan and Mark's son. He's now the general manager, taking over the reins from Ivan. He's also studied, you know, he studied business, but he's also studied winemaking. So I spoke to him briefly yesterday. He sounded pretty exhausted because they're really right in the thick of it right now. But look, I think, you know, they're just such a wonderful family. I'm very fortunate to be working for them. They're just so supportive, and it's quite reassuring to know that Dog Point, you know, the succession is there. And I think, you know, they've learned from James and Ivan, you know, Marg and Wendy, and now they're making their little their changes and they're stamping their footprint on the business. But you know, they've helped me so much. I've been working now for Dog Point for probably close to 3 years, but I'm usually over there helping them make the wine. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, I can't make it over there. So it's really unfortunate, but they always give me time. They've taught me so much, and yeah, very, very lucky to have them as support for me and very much for the brand for Dog Point moving forward. So moving on. Okay, so look, I just love this photo. You've probably seen this photo around in the north. You can see, you know, that's directly facing north. In the north, you can see the lovely Richmond Ranges. That's what I was talking about, that lovely cold air that sort of, you know, washes down in the evening. If you look just straight down the bottom past the covered vineyard down there, you can see our little winery tucked away in there. So yeah, that's where it's all happening right now. And just this vineyard closest to us, that's part of our home block. That's the part of our East Ridge, and that is our Pinot Noir. That's what, you know, that's that aspect. If you look right into the corner of the screen, that's probably pointing towards Wellington as well. But as you can see, our vineyards have, you know, especially our Pinot just has this lovely aspect, you know, those lovely northerly slopes, and just maximising the sunshine that, as I was saying, is so important to the Marlborough region. Okay, yeah, there's just a picture just of some of our, just so you know, Scott Henry, but you know, our vines are quite old. We, you know, some of our Chardonnay vines, I'll talk about later, but they were first planted in 1981. Our Pinot, some of our vines are from 1983, and approximately our Sauvignon from, you know, sort of at the moment, it's probably around that 1990 mark. But yeah, been there for a while, but pretty special. And very fortunate, you know, the history and Ivan setting up that region from, you know, quite a while back. We're very established now, and our wines are just producing some amazing fruit. Just moving on. Yes, so there's Nigel on our right, our viticulturist, and there's Anna. You know, she's always walking the vineyards. Actually, the whole family's always walking the vineyards. I get up early in the morning, and you always see Ivan and Marg walking around, just looking at all the vines. Ivan's just constantly sampling. But yeah, we decided in 2009 to convert everything to organics. At the time, it seemed like a mammoth task, but I think we're definitely reaping the rewards now. It's actually becoming quite an easy exercise. It's important to us. Our yields are really strong now, and you know, we're just getting better quality fruit. And you know, the whole organic philosophy is it's you know, employing more people, and it's also about, you know, everyone has a role to play at Dog Point. Everyone that works on site, you know, helps make the wine, and I think that's really important. It adds that personal touch to every bottle that you consume. But definitely organise. You know, we've been doing organics for a very long time, and arguably, you know, we've definitely got a lot of vines under the BioGrow certification. Yeah, and that's Grant, soul of the earth. Sometimes I hang out with him a bit actually, but he's always on the tractor. That's his little compost pit. That's where we put all our clippings. From the end of harvest, all our pressings go there, and we turn that over constantly, and we recycle that back into the soil, which is very important to us. Excuse me. And there's also we also run at the end of harvest. We run quite a lot of sheep through the vineyard. They're really important for weed management, but also for their organic matter. And it just sets up the vineyard for budburst in spring the following year. But you know, that's something, you know, it's always been farmland, and it's something that we've always practiced, and it sort of works seamlessly with making wine now, which is fair. Yeah. Next one. So this is just a little part of the property. Mark Sutherland was very big in creating a lovely sort of native environment. It's stunning. I mean, a lot of native plantings. You can walk along there. There's some stone fruit you can pick off trees, but it's also to harness, to create a little microclimate, and all these sort of things help pollination. And it's just a big part of what we do. We want to put back into the land. And you know, it just makes for a lovely experience. And not far from there, we have a little picnic every year under the olive trees, which is it's quite a special place. But you can see it's not just all about vineyards. It's also about the gardens, and there's a lot of upkeep that goes into it. But it just makes for a more sort of peaceful, enjoyable place to enjoy when we're there. And I think, you know, I certainly love walking around the vineyard. It is definitely stunning. It's a beautiful place. So yeah, there's the tokuka, the cabbage tree. That's what's on our label. That's something to, you know, a treasured native in New Zealand, but gives you an idea of what it looks like. And they're scattered throughout the vineyard. But that is definitely that's where our logo comes from. And also, it's I always forget about this, but we've got a very large vegetable patch, just actually quite close to where the Section 94 vineyard is. If we have a night off during harvest, I know I always frequent there and try and grab a few eggs. Always make it, you know, just to get some energy up, you know, make an omelette back home at where I'm staying. But you know, it's got capsicum, it's got potatoes, it's got pumpkin, it's got garlic, it's got peppers, I think you call it, but it's got tomatoes. Yeah, we have all sorts of things, and you know, it just helps you know, everyone can share. But unfortunately, Matt and his son Harry love their eggs on toast in the morning, so they're first to get the fresh eggs laid by the hens. So, you know, if you do get eggs, it's definitely a win, that's for sure. Just moving on. And I always forget. We also have bees. Yeah, we want to create that little microclimate where, you know, bees are very important for pollination, and you know, honey tastes great. So, you know, that is something we've had for quite a while now, but that's very important to us as well. We just want to put back in to the area, put back into our vineyards, and you know, just create a good environment for things to breed. Next. Okay, I haven't spoken about Murray. This is Murray. He's our head winemaker. Murray's just, you know, so good to work with. He's a little powerhouse. He's a little pocket dynamo, but highly intelligent. He's worked. He studied in Australia, but he also worked under Tom Carson down at Yarring Station, back in the day. Yarring Station, and you know, he's very much a perfectionist. You always see him running around at 100 miles an hour. He's hard to keep up with, but the whole Sutherlands are like that. I know when I get to the winery to start harvest, I have to actually increase my walking pace considerably, because they are just machines. I've never actually met someone that works as hard as Murray, and you know, the patience he has with me and the team, and what he's imparting, and he's also adding his own little flair now, which is great. Definitely a big asset to Dog Point, and yeah, very fortunate to have Muzz. So these are our 4 wines. So we only make 4 wines. We don't want to overcomplicate things. We want to grow clones. We want to grow grapes that really thrive in our environment in the Southern Valleys. So on the left, you have our tank fermented Sauvignon Blanc. Then we have Section 94, our barrel fermented Sauvignon Blanc, our Chardonnay, and our Pinot Noir. We want to keep it. We don't want to overcomplicate things, and we just want to do the best we can. And it makes for life a little bit easier in the vineyard. But again, we have those northern aspects, those clay soils, those clay-loam soils for the Savvy, and it just thrives in this region, and especially where we are in the Southern Valleys. So we'll just move on.
So, Jak, we might actually just stop there and talk a bit about the four wines, because
yes,
you are actually one of the few wineries where we stock the entire range. These days, most wineries make so many different varietals or styles of wine that we tend to cherry pick. But going right back to 2006, we've been stocking the Sauvignon Blancs, and 2007, both the Chardonnay and the Pinot Noir. So it's kind of a sign, I guess, of the quality and the esteem that we hold the Dog Point Winery in. And we've obviously had a great relationship with you since. But I've been seeing lots of chat about members having different wines open. But maybe perhaps you could just talk us through the 2020 Sauvignon Blanc and just that wine in particular.
Sure. Well, 2020, I mean, as you know, was an interesting year. It's when the pandemic arrived, but we're very fortunate. We had in 2020, we actually had a few staff had to go home to be with their families because we had a full lockdown in New Zealand. So we had limited staff, but we all had to live on site. So we were a bit worried at first. We thought, how is the hand picking going to get done? How are we going to manage this? But 2020, turned out to be an extremely good vintage. It was, we love lovely hang time, especially for the Savvy. Lovely. We had lovely bud burst, lovely flower set, fruit set. There weren't any, it was just actually quite dry, if anything, and warm at times. But we're able, I think Ivan was saying, the fruit quality was it's just perfect. The Pinot coming down, we're more looking at it on the sorting table than actually sorting it. I know, and that was a bit like 19, but the Savvy in particular, it's just a fantastic vintage. So we crop it about anywhere from sort of 8 to 10 tonnes per hectare. We handpick everything for our Sauvignon Blanc. We whole bunch press
as well. We always whole bunch press, but we press gently. We just want that purity of flavour. We'll then cold settle it for a couple of days, and then we'll actually let approximately 50% of that go through a wild ferment. And that's really important to us. It adds a little bit of, I suppose, a little bit of texture, just a slight little bit of reduction there, which we are quite famous for, but not too much. It's still quite a clean, polished Sauvignon Blanc. We leave in tank for probably 3-4 months to settle, and then we bottle, and we usually release sort of at the back end of the year. Even Sauvignon Blanc just needs a little bit of time to mesh, and we release it to market. But a really rewarding vintage. I mean, it has a lovely citrus core. It's very aromatic. It has a lovely sort of lemon pith, sort of lemon character on the palate. I just find it's very quenching. And not too much in that tropical spectrum, but again with those lovely clay loam soils, we definitely, you'll see it through all our through our whites. We get this lovely citrus core, which is really important to us, and it has lovely sort of chalkiness to it, and it's just a lovely acidity and just a lovely easy drinking wine. And it does, and a lot of people ask me, I tell people out in trade when I do dinners, our Sauvignon Blancs do tend to age. I think we released a little bit of our 2010 Sauvignon Blanc recently in Australia just for a customer, but it's a bit of a showstopper. People don't understand, but I think it is the organics. I think it is the whole bunch pressing, but gently pressing, and just treating the grapes with as much care as possible. And then our wines don't tend to go too vegetal, too tropical. They just age gracefully.
Yeah, spot on. I think that's one of the things that really distinguishes Dog Point, particularly against a lot of the avalanche of New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc out there, is that purity of fruit, and that you don't go into the tropical herbaceous either end of the spectrum. So I'm seeing a lot of members drinking some back vintages as well. So a lot seem to be drinking the 2019. So maybe a quick comparison between the 19 and 20 vintages. You touched on it.
Look, 19 was very similar to 2020, excluding the pandemic. We still had, again, that lovely citrus backbone. We had the lovely quenching ability of the grapes. To be perfectly honest, there wasn't much splitting the two vintages. I can honestly say that I was there. I think probably the fruit that just came through in 2020 was just consistently pristine. But no problems at all with the 19. It was just an exceptional vintage. But you're probably getting a little bit more richness, flavour, a little bit more texture in the 2020 than the 19. But again, it's really marginal. They're two excellent wines. We were very lucky. I think 17 was the tough year, but we got through that. There was quite a bit of rain late in the harvest, but we've moved on from 17 for the Sauvignon. Yeah, so that's our Sauvignon Blanc.
Sure. So we might move now into the Dog Point, the Selection 94.
Selection 94. As I showed you earlier on, Section 94 it's just down the bottom of the East Ridge, with lovely clay loam soils. It's always been the Sauvignon that performs very, very, very well. We crop at about 6 tonnes per hectare for that vineyard. It's obviously pretty low. I think the average probably in the valley is anywhere from 13. With the other wineries, anywhere 13 to 15 tonnes per hectare. But again, always very pristine fruit. We had a mild spring, free of frost. We had excellent bud bursts, and we had really, really lovely, nice, even growths. It actually got quite warm. I think in February, though, we had a bit of a burst of rain in 2018. So we had to do, our canopy, Nigel canopy management was really important. We had to open up the canopies and let those easterly winds do their work. I suppose it was a testing vintage, but in the end, a very, very much a rewarding vintage. It really kept us on our toes. But look, with Section 94, we hand pick, we gently press, and I think for 24 hours we pressed it to tank for settling, and then we put it straight into barrel for 18 months for fermentation in aging oak barrels. So I think we use Francois Frias, That's what they're usually medium toast, but anywhere the oak barrels are from 2 to 7 years old. They're just used as a vessel to have, when you whole bunch, you get a lot of solids through the wine, and we want that in our barrels, and we don't use enzymes either. So that's where we get a lot of our reduction from, which is what Section 94. It can be very much present, but it differs from year in, year out. So yeah, we use 100% wild ferment as well with that wine, and with all our wines, we don't use any fining, and for our whites, minimum filtration. We just want to keep it on the solids. It's a bit of a footprint of that year, but again, when you whole bunch, you usually do get a lot of those lees and a lot of those solids in the barrels and in the wine.
We've got a couple of questions. Could you just elaborate on what a wild ferment is and wild yeast?
Okay, so we just have the ability to harness the yeast that is in the air, which is in the vineyard and in the winery. And we can, when you put those wines in the barrel, there's just so much yeast around. We can just harness that and let it ferment. So it's as simple as us pressing the fruit, putting it straight to barrel. I'll park the barrels in the shed, put the bung in loosely, and we just wait. But because it's quite warm, the natural ferment just kicks off. Just kicks off. Yeah, I don't know, after a few days, and it might be my job to go in and hose out the shed because they're spewing over with the ferment. Then when autumn comes, the ferment slows, it gets cooler, the ferment slows right down, and we'll just top up those barrels and let them sleep until spring comes, and they even sometimes just keep fermenting, bubbling away, and then they stop, and then we just leave on solids for 18 months.
Sure. And probably potentially goes to a question, but we've got a question from Gareth Keating who asks, why is Dog Point Section 94 so special and yet so divisive at the same time?
Oh, look, it is very polarizing, but we want to taste the year. We want to harness those solids. We want to use wild ferments, and we don't do any lees stirring. But a lot of people, when they make Sauvignon Blanc, they don't leave it on solids. They don't use wild ferments. We want to add texture. We want to add that flintiness, that nuttiness, but also you can get those lovely citrus, mango sort of peach flavors through the wine. And these wines, I tried 2 days ago in Sydney. I tried the 2014 Section 94, and it's just lovely. It's so vibrant. It's still got lovely acidity. It doesn't really show any really seriously aged characteristics, and they just have a life of their own. And I think that's what makes it quite special. Yes, it is polarizing, but again, what we've found with Section 94 is it's just such a good wine to match with food, and especially like in the UK and in Europe, especially, they understand that style, that fumet style. It's taken a little bit a while for say Australia to understand it. When you do a tasting and you show our first Sauvignon Blanc against the Section 94, it definitely does divide the room, but I'm finding now people are getting used to that style in certain markets around the world. And look, again, it can handle chili. It can handle, it does really well for us in Hong Kong with dumplings, but then it can handle the gamey meats as well. It's such a versatile wine, but definitely polarizing. But I think that gap's closing. I think people are after a little bit of interest in their Sauvignon Blanc now.
Yeah, no, interest is spot on, and yeah, it certainly has huge amounts of complexity. I've got a glass myself, and I had some spicy lamb chops earlier, and it stood up to that, and actually, yeah, it was actually a really nice match. Whereas I thought it could set my mouth on fire, but it was a lovely match in the end. So we probably have some more questions on the 94, but we might come back to those. We'll move on to the Chardonnay now.
Yeah. Okay. So Chardonnay. So these are up on those slopes. A lot of those slopes in the home vineyards. We have about 75% Mendoza clone, and 25% is clone 95. These were planted in 1981, so arguably some of the oldest vines in the Marlborough region. When the boom of Sauvignon Blanc took off, unfortunately, a lot of the Chardonnay, the Mendoza clone was ripped out and replaced with the Sauvignon Blanc. But we kept ours. We knew our aspect, the clay soils, the north-facing slopes, we knew how good our fruit, we knew how good our grapes were, and it's something we love drinking. We love drinking Chardonnay, Chablis from all over the world, white Burgundy. So it was key that we kept that. We're very fortunate. Our clay soils do hold. We don't tend to irrigate a lot either, so the lovely clay soils hold a little bit of moisture, so they can just do their own thing. But again, we crop. For 2018. I sort of told you a little bit about that year, but we're cropping at about 4.5 tons per hectare. For like Premier Grand Cru, they might crop anywhere from 2.5 to 5 tons per hectare. They probably don't produce the most fruit, but the intensity of flavours, the Mendoza clone is very important to us. We get lovely flavour, but we also get lovely acidity in those grapes. So yeah, we again, just like we do with all our barrel wines, we handpick whole bunches, we gently press, and with this particular in 2018, we put it straight into barrel. There again, like the Section 94, it's about 10% new oak. For that, we will then just park again in the shed, let it naturally ferment, 100% wild ferment, as I mentioned before. And again, it just ferments away, slows down, and then but then we'll let it also go through a secondary fermentation. So New Zealand being very much cool climate, probably in the top 10, 15 cool climate regions of the world, where we get lovely acidity in our grapes. So we put it through 100% malolactic fermentation. Again, we just leave in barrel for 18 months on solids, on lees. We don't do any lee stirring whatsoever. And then when it's right, we siphon off the barrels, put to bottle, and then we also leave at least for another year in bottle before we release.
I'm sure many members will. Many members will know about malolactic fermentation or transformation. Could you maybe just explain why you do that?
Well, it's just a conversion of lactic acid to malolactic acid, and because we're about, especially in cool climate regions, we're able to, I suppose, grab some of that acidity, and actually it adds a bit of body and weight and richness to the wine. If you were to do secondary fermentation in a very hot climate, say for instance the Barossa or something like that, you'd get something that would be very oily, very popcorny, very buttery, and you need that really nice acidic backbone that the grapes hold in the region of Marlborough. So we're able to do that. I think I probably should talk about the aromas of this 2018 Chardonnay. So we've got lovely gunflint, smoky aromas. There's a little bit of that reduction. That's a bit of a footprint that we had, but we harness that. That's it. We love chasing that a little bit. Something we've done for a very long time, and even with James really pioneered that style for us, and that's something we'll always do. We'll definitely always do. But it also sits on lovely. It also, again, being on those clay soils, it has that lovely citrus core. Has lovely chalkiness, and has lovely fruit flavors, and again, just has that that lovely acidity. Yeah, but we also, the flavors that on the palate you kind of get nutty flavors, creamy texture, but we also get a lovely sort of saline character through that wine, and that lovely grapefruit marmalade-y sort of character is shining through on the 18. Another good year, 16, was probably not so much that. It was definitely still had that citrus core, but it was probably just a little bit more voluptuous on the palate, like had a little bit more viscosity. But 18 it definitely has focus. It's going to live for a very long time. That's for sure. And most of our wines do age. That's definitely at least 10 years. Everyone always says 10 years, but who knows, it could be longer.
Yeah, everyone does say 10 years, but I think have the track record to show that it really does. So we're drinking 2004 Savvy, Sauvignon Blanc. So yeah, 10. I probably shouldn't say 10 years. We don't actually know. Sometimes we open these things up and they're still alive and still racy. So yeah, it's a bit of a broad sort of answer. Yeah, you mentioned reduction there, and we did have a question about the gunflint aromas, both on the Sauvignon Blanc and the Chardonnay. Can you maybe just explain that in a little bit further?
Yeah, well, like I said before, we whole bunch press. When you whole bunch press, you get a lot of those solids. So you actually get juice that is a little bit cloudy. and that's that cloudy, that solids that we try and harness. And we're not adding enzymes, so we're not trying to clean up the wine, and that settles over time, especially in barrel, and that actually creates that reduction.
Sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, in the chat, I'd love to hear from members whether they like that or not, because it is something that's quite divisive. With even within the Wine Society staff, there's some that love it and some that are not such a fan of it. I'm very much a fan of it and seek it out in particular.
Now, look, every year's different. Like some years we get more reduction, some years we get less reduction. It's just, again, like I was saying before, we just want to taste the year. It's all about what the organic vineyards are doing. We want to keep it interesting. It's like food. You don't want to eat the same thing all the time. You want to taste different things. That's the spice of life, and that's really important to us.
Yeah, it's probably good time. We've had a lot of questions on corks and moving to Stelvins, because you did originally bottle your wines under cork.
Yes.
But was there a time where for different markets you had different closures? Because
I wouldn't say it was markets. We love cork. But we also love Stelvin. We love screw cap, and we just had to make it. We just had to make a decision. Yes, the wines under cork do develop a little bit. Like our 13 Section 94 was the last year we did cork, and that sort of Section 94 just tends to have a little bit more of those sort of earthy mushroom sort of characters with that cork seal. But under screw cap, they still develop and they still age really well. We're sort of, with 2014 section, we're not even afraid to decamp that under screw cap. But, there was nothing divisive. There was nothing divisive that made us change. We just had to make a decision. But yeah, we love cork. We love screw cap.
Sure.
Yeah.
I see you've got a slide talking about the future or driving Marlborough forward. Do you want to talk about that first, or move on to the Pinot Noir?
I think we could probably move to Pinot Noir, I think, and then I'll talk. Yeah, we'll talk about that. But so what is that? You have the 2018 Pinot Noir. So this is our new release. So again, up on those home vineyards, and a little bit comes from our Settlement and Yarram vineyard, which is just over the back, which is a little bit higher up, but again, still north facing. The plantings date back to about 1983. The clones are predominantly 70% Dijon. I think we have, which is for all you clone lovers out there, 667, 777, 115. And we also have a little bit of clone 5, Able, and 10 bar 5. So they're the clones we use. North-facing slopes, clay soils. I mean, this fruit is, just lovely fruit. We're very lucky to have that aspect of that facing of the vineyards. We handpick everything for, as I said before, we're cropping at about, I think for this year it was about 4.5 tonnes per hectare. And we handpick whole bunches. We bring down to the winery. We'll just refrigerate them overnight. We probably chill to 7-8 degrees. And then we run over the sorting table every year. So it's about 25% whole bunch, 75% destemmed. And we just tip the whole bunches in first, the destem in the top, and then we let that go. That'll undergo a wild fermentation in open tank fermenters for approximately 3 weeks. Once that heat starts coming off, we taste it and test it, and we put it to barrel. Sometimes the ferment hasn't finished, and they'll keep bubbling away in those lovely, Burgundian oak barrels. We use approximately, for this year, I think it was, but 2018, it was 30% new oak. I think with 17, it was 35% new oak. So we just change accordingly to the year. We leave on solids for 18 months, as we do with all our barrel wines. And when after that period, we'll definitely siphon off the wine. We'll combine them. And we don't use any fining or filtration in that wine. Having that time on solids for such a long period of time, we just get lovely sort of natural clarification in our wines. I mean, 18 months is a long time in barrel, but we definitely reap the rewards down the track. A lot of producers, I'm not sure, like it can be anywhere from 6 to 12 to 15 months. But yeah, we've always sort of strived for that 18 months. But I'm sure there are producers that do, sort of keep their wines in vessels for 18 months, oak vessels. I suppose 18, 18, like I said, we had lovely flowering, we had lovely bud burst, we had lovely flowering. There was a lovely
was a lovely warm year. With our Pinot, you get lovely sort of perfume, bright sort of flowers, definitely that character of red berries, but there's also a little bit of brambly sort of characters going on with a little bit of dry herbs. So, we tend to, we obviously keep our wines in that fermenting for three weeks in tanks, and then we'll press it and then put it to barrel. It's pretty succulent and supple on the palate. Red cherries, again, sort of spicy. But I think, this wine's going to age really well. I think it's still we're still quite young, and I think it's still working itself out in the bottle. But I mean, every week I'll try to bottle, and it seems to be, it's in a very good place. And I think again, another wine that's going to age very gracefully.
Yeah, we've had a question come through. Does Dog Point Pinot Noir improve with age like good Burgundy? How does it develop with age? What can we expect to see?
I've just been trying 2010 actually, so 2010 Pinot. So 2010, probably 2020 are very, very good years. You probably 2010, like for instance, it was quite, it still has lovely acidity, but you start getting a little bit of sort of, that sort of cedar box, cigar box characters, but you still get that lovely brambly fruit, but you probably get a little bit more of, definitely discoloration, it sort of just slightly goes into those sort of garnet hues, but still, drinking really well. All our wines age, that's probably only, we've been really fortunate. But yeah, definitely age. They probably just get a little bit, I don't know, richer, a little bit more, I don't know, there's lots of flavour there for some of our old wines.
Yeah, I think, especially compared to the majority of Marlborough Pinots, there is just that intensity of fruit and that complexity. I find with some Marlborough Pinots, especially at the cheaper end, they're pretty much raspberry cordial, but your ones certainly don't fall into that category.
No, well, there's probably a reason for that. Again, we're on those clay soils, so we don't tend to have to irrigate unless necessary. A lot of the Pinot plantings in the valley might be down closer to the river. And the soil is probably a little bit more sort of porous, a little bit more schisty. So they tend to irrigate a lot more. And that's when you get those sort of, those, like you're saying, those lighter, really light sort of, almost, I wouldn't say carbonic maceration, but you get those lovely sort of strawberries characters coming through. But yeah, ours are definitely a lot more sort of rustic and earthy, and probably just have a little bit more power, a little bit more richness.
And you said that a lot of your wines, they're really made to go with food. I've actually had one member send through a recipe from Ivan, I believe, which I'll share with all members. It's a duck and mushroom risotto, which sounds rather tasty. But maybe some suggested food pairings for the Pinot.
It's so funny you should say that, because last year when we were in lockdown and I think we worked 41 days straight last year during the pandemic making wine. James was up at the bell tower and he had a few of the guys up there. He always makes mushroom risotto, and we're really lucky. I think I had a morning off one day, and I think it was just after harvest, and I could walk down to the winery from where I was staying, and I was actually literally picking mushrooms growing, and we're always eating mushroom risotto. But yeah, look, we love it with lamb. We any of those gamey meats, so even some oily fishes, it can work with. But again, it's still very versatile. It's much of like I think you're right. Risotto, mushroom, those earthy flavors, things like that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got quite a few members' questions to get through, but maybe if we just bring up the last couple of slides, just to show the last couple of photos that you did have.
Yes.
And you can just run us through those.
Yeah, well, I think, something that's always been important to us is the organic side of things and specialising in that. And I think, what Dog Point's done, what a lot of wineries are now doing in New Zealand is it's stamping a footprint, the importance of organics, the importance of sustainability. And yeah, that's something that will always, which is always evolving and always changing, and we'll always be studying about organics at the winery. I think too, like I sort of said before, the younger generation coming through, it's really great to know that the people that are coming through, the family that are coming through, and they've got children, and that Dog Point is in a very good place.
I always worry. I've sold wine for a lot of portfolios over the year prior to Dog Point, and you always hope that the sons and daughters take over the reins and do a really good job. But look, we're just going to keep focusing on those 4 wines and doing what we do and doing it well. And we want Murray, we want Matt, we want them to put their own little spin on the wines. If they think there's a way of improving the wine, we want them to have that creativity.
Wonderful. So that actually answers a couple of questions that we've had, whether there are plans to expand or are you happy with the size of the estate? But it sounds like you are.
Look, I think the world's, for a long period of time, it's all about growth, and we don't want to sacrifice quality for growth. We'll just make what we can every year with the hectares that we have, and definitely, it's not something we discuss. What we get from those vineyards is what we make.
But of course, you do actually. There's a few more wines made in the winery. We've had the question about Greywacke and Kevin Judd making wine, and the connection between Dog Point, Greywacke, and Cloudy Bay. Maybe just touch on that, because we did release the 2020 Sauvignon Blanc as a trio with those wines. So maybe just touch on that.
Yeah, look, I think last year was the first year that Greywacke actually had their winery up and running. It was always a very small operation, and they've expanded now. So Kev was always in our little makeshift lab. He was always sampling, fruit from vineyards. Some of the vineyards Dog Point owns, some of the vineyards Kev owns. I suppose they do things a little bit differently to us. They use different Burgundian oak. But, definitely a special relationship with Kev. I think my first year at Dog Point was the 2019 harvest. We actually made the Pinot on site at Dog Point because they just didn't have the facilities. They were in that transition. And a lot of the times the guys from Greywacke come up and use our sorting table. So, it's definitely a very strong and healthy relationship with Greywacke.
I think that collaborative nature is something that, drives whole regions forward, and I think it's something that should be celebrated. So I think
Marlborough, especially, yes, there's some big players in Marlborough. Not far from us we have Villa Maria, but that is it's a big operation. They're just a lovely family as well, and I think everyone shares secrets, everyone shares their time and talks about what they're doing. There's definitely that's something I think New Zealand's very good at. I'm Australian, working for a New Zealand company, but been selling Dog Point for a long time. But that's one thing I know. It's a real community down in Marlborough, and everyone is very friendly, and they don't hold anything close. They definitely share.
Yeah. So a question from Russell is, what are the risks with going organic?
Other risks? Well, I think at first, we're probably concerned about yields, but an example is powdery mildew and things like that. If up on the hills, here's an example. If you have a lovely pristine vineyard of Chardonnay way up in the north part of the north-facing slopes, back in the day, you might get an outbreak of powdery mildew, and there might have been a time when you would have, sprayed, a bit of copper sulfate at them to just try and prevent it from spreading. But what we're finding now with organics, the vineyards are building up immunity. So even if we get a little bit of powdery mildew on something low in the valley, we don't worry about it as so much now, because if there is an outbreak, that row or that vineyard, it doesn't blow out of control. And I think that's the whole importance of organics is building that immunity, is harnessing those insects that keep that biodiversity, that keep the other bugs, the evil bugs at bay. And I think that's something we've definitely, that's definitely the benefits of organics. And you know what? We don't want the fruit to look the same and taste the same. We want variation. We want high quality fruit, and we're very fortunate to be able to do that. Yeah, and I think I touched on it before with organics. Everyone has a role to play. We're not using machine harvesters. We're not using massive presses. We've got people out in the vineyards handpicking. Everyone contributes to what goes out into bottle. We even have our staff Pinot. So we leave a barrel just outside of the winery, and when we're doing the pressing of the Pinot bunches, once we take that light pressing and combine that with the other Pinot, we actually press it really hard and just put it into the barrel, and we sell it to staff. for, I think it's about $15 for a 6-pack. And sometimes that wine turns out really, it's quite interesting. But yeah, look, that's our organic philosophy. It just gives our wine interests quality, lots of flavour. It's really important.
And then speaking of risks, a question from Michael McCarthy: Do the sheep ever damage the vines? No,
they don't. We usually the hand pickers prune all the vines straight after harvest. The sheep's focus on all the buckwheat, all the grasses, the native grasses as well. So they're pretty happy munching on those, not the vineyards. So they don't. No. They might maybe bump into a few vines, but nothing major.
Yeah. One question I had was about the Section 94. Someone commented on how it changed in the glass.
Yes.
Is temperature an important aspect with serving complex wines like this, do you think?
Oh, look, I think it's up to the individual, but I mean, we serve it a bit like a Chardonnay. So we like it to be slightly chilled. There's no question. It does definitely. I mean, anything under a screw cap, it's almost the perfect seal. So it needs time to breathe in the glass. Well, under cork, it is a little bit porous, so it tends to develop a little bit faster. But no, definitely does develop in the glass, no question. And it will keep doing it for a while. You can sometimes get, those lovely melon, sort of mango, citrus characters. But then sometimes over time, when that wine ages, you can get this lovely sort of butterscotch character coming through. Yeah.
Wonderful. We've got a number of questions about the classic one of can members visit when the time comes and borders are open. Obviously, both New Zealand and Australia have a little bit more freedom than we do in the UK at the moment. But what is there to? What's the situation like when we can come to visit?
Well, we're hoping. Well, look, we're hoping. Like we're letting in New Zealanders into Australia now. We're hoping that once everyone's vaccinated, the international flights might start again in September. We have accommodation on site, so we've got a lovely bell tower right just above the in between the confluence of the Brancock and the Marker Valleys. But we'd love to have you over. We're just a family. We look after you. We don't have a cellar door, but someone from the family or someone that works there will definitely give you a private tasting. But we sort of we really miss our overseas markets. The UK has always been a really important market to us. It's really helped us to get our message out there to the world. And it's terrible when we see you guys locked up for in quarantine for 4 months. We only did it for I think Melbourne in Australia may have done it for a couple of months, but we want to see you outdoors. We want to see you over here, but also we want to be over there. We love, Kiwis and Aussies do love to travel. We're dreaming of that day when we can all get together again.
I've had a few emails come through from members telling me their experience of when they have visited, and it's they've been kind of thrown in the back of the truck and taken on a tour of the vines, and it sounds like you do throw out the welcome mat. So yeah.
They're a working family. Like it's quite incredible. The family of Dog Point, the winemaker Murray, Nigel the viticulturist, even the guys that the farmers that look after the sheep. They're just a working family, and we just want we don't have the fancy cellar door. We've always got our hands dirty doing something, and it's always going to be that way.
Wonderful. I've got one question of going back to organic, sorry, but what does the organic philosophy mean when it comes to sulfites? How do you use sulfites? And
oh, look, there's no questions. We use sulfites. Sulfites are naturally occurring in winemaking. I think we tend to use less when we can because we gently press. And we don't run those presses for a long period of time. Like we're cropping low, or all those gentle presses, that free run juice, that pristine fruit. You don't need to necessarily add a lot of sulfur. If we ran the press for a long period of time, the juice comes out clear, then it's sort of green, clear, green, and the longer the press goes, the browner, the more that fruit oxidizes. That's the trick.
just to get that lovely purity of fruit. Then you don't need to throw sulfur at it to give it structure to stabilise the wine. But yeah, we do use it.
Yeah. Wonderful. So one question from Roger Nunn. Do you foresee a time when the Kiwi Sauvignon Blanc phenomenon will run out of steam on international markets, or will it just keep rolling on, or as I call it, the Savalanche of Kiwi Savi?
I think, look, definitely certain markets, the bulk Savvy is definitely dropping. The Savvy that's volume. We're finding premium Savvy, our sales have actually gone up in the last 12 months. It's sort of like horses for courses, like the US are in love with New Zealand Savvy at the moment. And look, we still see solid sales with Sauvignon Blanc around the world. I think people now probably like our Section 94. They want to try and experiment with some little barrel fermented things. I think maybe the volume may slow down a bit, but it's hard to predict because when you sell to a lot of wine lists, Savvy is still a big seller on wine lists. So I don't see it slowing down anytime soon. But it's like everything. I mean, Coonawarra Cabernet isn't the flavour of the month at the moment. Every varietal goes through a sort of slowing down period, but. I don't know. I think we're lucky because we do everything by hand, and we're categorised more of a premium, and that's what the world's enjoying at the moment.
Yeah, and I saw Oyster Bay release their financial results and seen their performance in the US at the moment. It doesn't appear to be slowing anytime soon. So that's coming right up to 9:30. So thank you so much for your time. You've joined it pretty early. It was 6:30, now 7:30 in the morning for you.
Yeah. Time for a coffee, I think. But, I just wanted to thank the Wine Society. You've really helped us over many years to establish Dog Point in that region, and all the drinkers as well. I hope there's Dog Point helping you through lockdown and putting a smile on your face. Look, we just can't wait till the world opens up again and we can greet you with open arms.
Wonderful. So just one final question. You mentioned the picnic, the annual picnic. What date is that? So we can.
It's usually just before harvest. So usually at Dog Point, we usually harvest Pinot first, then Chardonnay, and then Sauvignon Blanc. So it's usually sort of late February. We cancelled it this year. We had no choice, but it's something we'll definitely bring back into the future. It's just lovely. You sit under the trees by that little stream, that picture you saw before. We just eat lovely. We might eat local salmon, pawa, white baked fritters. It's pretty. I'd definitely put it on your list of things to do. If you can come out, that's great.
I think
it's sort of towards the end of Feb normally.
A Wine Society tour in 2024 to celebrate our 150 year anniversary might be called for. We'll come and pay a visit.
You're most welcome. Everyone's welcome.
But
we might make it work. It's pretty close to harvest. The picnic's just before harvest, so if you stick around, you never know. You might get your hands dirty. We could use you for something.
There's no such thing as a free lunch, that's for sure.
That's right.
Well, to all the members, thank you so much for joining us this evening. As I said, I will send through an email with a special recipe you might like to pair with the Pinot Noir. If you have any questions that we didn't get to, please do let us know by email. We'll get Jak to follow up on them, and we'll get you as much information as we possibly can. But thank you so much for joining us tonight. I hope you've enjoyed it. And hope to see you again soon. We've got lots of events coming up and lots more to taste with you. So thanks very much. Thanks, Jak.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.